Right. So let's start with a bit of exploration into stereotypes. Describe the personality you assume the figure to have. What adjective would you use to describe their personality? And the adjectives will give you an idea of the stereotypical values based upon appearance. Do you think someone else could guess the character from your description? And how do you describe them? Do you prefer a particular description of one of the iconic princesses over the other? For example, Disney's Sleeping Beauty: demure, passive, beautiful, innocent, and waiting upon a prince. So this is a common archetype of the innocent young virgin who in her tale epitomizes the qualities expected in a young lady maturing, albeit slowly over 100 years, into a young woman ready for her partner. So is this a healthy model for young women? And to wait upon someone to come along and be activated from the outside, external validation over internal drive? How could these attributes become problematic later in life, especially considering that at the center of her existential transformation is a man, this Prince Charming? All right, what about Disney's Maleficent? Old, evil, envious, and prideful. She actively pursues and maintains power and respect. She's political. An archetype of the witch as a demonization of the wise older woman. Much akin to a mother figure, but rather than nurturing, her entrance into the male-dominated realm of politics has just transformed her and made her malevolent. The two most common character types of the early princess films, the young virgin and the old witch, introduced to young children as there is only one way to remain good, and that is to remain like young or dependent and at least innocent in appearance. So could we ever see Maleficent as a princess? Perhaps much more likely a queen. Okay, what about Belle? Intelligent, astute, beautiful, and young. Belle breaks boundaries as she isn't awaiting a prince, but is trapped into a relationship she grows into. So can we imagine this version of Belle as a princess as she wears Beast's outfit? She is young, intelligent, demonstrating her ability to blend feminine and masculine qualities. Is this at least a move out of the black and white thinking of earlier versions that limit what a princess can be? This Belle provides us with the young professional woman. While not an archetype, it introduces young women to a new, here colonized model of women that centers around study and independence, a civilized version. While the story serves to promote the idea that with intelligence, a young woman can rescue their male man kitten or civilize the savage male. Mature, sensual, natural here. What do you expect to happen after the happily ever after? So acknowledging the sensual side of humanity, of women, the archetype of the sensual woman is often taboo in this genre, and it doesn't get intermingled with those other stereotypes of mother, witch, or virgin. And yet isn't it also part of being human? So this image, more than any other, perhaps because of its objectification of self as an object or as a sexual object, is the most refuted in terms of images of a princess. And it seems hard to imagine a princess as desirable in this way, although many of the tales direct the attention to this through a symbolic level, at a symbolic level. So the impact on the repression of the sexual nature of women is perhaps more due to the age of the audience and the age of the protagonists in our fairy tales. The image of Snow White here is much more in line with the Italian tales of Basile that were edited out by Perrault, the Grimms, and Disney as their target audiences became much younger. So the lack of representation of a sensual archetype, however, creates a worldview in which there is a very natural side of humanity that is pushed out of the public eye. It's repressed or even associated with vice. So what about Snow White is fierce and aggressive and fit, the princess who is ready to fight for her rights. And while not considered an archetype per se, the young maiden who is athletic and aggressive is not uncommon in myth and legend. And she is much easier to conceive of as a princess, but is it that she finds her equal? Or is her narrative to be domesticated in sort of a reversal of the Beauty and Beast trope? So to create more active, aggressive, and independent princesses was a key aspect of feminist critique of fairy tales, and there have been considerable strides made in this area. If you think about the impact of this revision of the princess image on children, then in this, you see the encouragement to seek out their own path and to excel while being themselves. So, what kinds of archetypes are promoted in the media that you read, watch, and listen to? Do they reflect the possibilities for women and men that you take for granted or that are perhaps limiting? What about women of different backgrounds and cultures? So, the feminist critique of fairy tales is that they set up at an early age a model of passivity and silence, awaiting a prince or a prince marriage and family establishment as ideal, to come later instead of being assertive and going after what one wants, following creativity, profession, or whom one wants to love. The fairy tales promote the notion that a princess should be happy with what is given, relying upon a male to make decisions for her. At least this is the criticism of those tales. The tales instill self-censorship in young women that inhibits them from striving and trying to accomplish their own goals. And many of the tales realign the classical configuration of these characters, the 2 points being a repositioning of in the revisions, we're talking about a repositioning of a Prince Charming as a villain and constructing more assertive and aggressive heroines. So a critique of these revisions is that they typically limit themselves to rewriting only the most popular tales, often working off the Disney version and not the Grimm or other. And tales like Snow White, Cinderella, and Sleeping Beauty are the ones that most often get the critique. While other tales and versions feature more assertive female protagonists, and they never quite reach the popularity of these others. The princesses take on more responsibility for the actions in these other tales. And so a second critique of these revisions is that the changes that are made are rather superficial and ignore the deeper meaning that the fairy tale and fantasy serve, such as the status of the protagonist attempting to flee from maturation by remaining childlike, who then find their freedom through social pairing. So an awareness of the harmful stereotypes of fairy tales brought purposefully written revisions by authors such as Babette Cole. And in Babette Cole's Princess Smarty Pants from 1986, the author takes up and transforms the gender roles and expectations established in the traditional fairy tales. Our princess can be recognized as the haughty princess type, who would traditionally undergo a humiliating trial before marriage. Instead, we have her do all the things that she wants. She explores her own way of life. And we see soon that the prince is also afraid of those things that the Princess Smarty Pants enjoys and finds excitement in. It's recognizing her independence so that their happily ever after is not with each other. As a follow-up to the success of Princess Smarty Pants, Cole followed with Prince Cinders in 1987. And it's a very similar tale, but here a gender switch for Cinderella with a young male taking on the role. And his own inflated ego provided by the fairy, and upon meeting the princess, scares her with his brutish look and hides when his vulnerable self is revealed. He's elevated when it turns out that he's only can fit the pants she has found, and his chauvinistic brothers are emasculated through their transformation into fairies themselves. So this awareness was the product of a longer trajectory of tackling the problematic depiction of women in the media and their history and fight for equality.